Well, threatening on the front line, but NRG at the moment are currently threatening Obey to knock them out of Masters Land already in the quarterfinals matchups, because at the moment, NRG standing 1-0 strong, and I know that this team is very excited. They've had a bit of a rough split, but they're not looking too rough right now, and in fact, I want to take a look and see more about NRG.
That's not enough with emilitoo right around the corner. Yammyn with the hearts over the wall variety. No escape.
Only iRaffer gets really hit by that ultimate coming out from Shadow Nightmare. However, the final judgment hits Shadow in the face, and the crushing walls from Rafa will claim his life. Sonic boom to the back from adapting. Punch to the face of Shadow Nightmare. Next on the list is Rezzy. That's a double.
And composure, that's really the hallmark, I would say, for NRG. They are just a incredibly impactful roster all around the board, and just sound members every single time they show up.
Very serious photo right there. You know, different story compared to Obey Alliance. More joking in the matter, but NRG, they're here to play and take it seriously, especially considering their less than average performance in the online phases.
I mean, sometimes things just don't happen to go your way. NRG said themselves multiple times that they were a little bit slower as far as waking up to the new meta, but that doesn't really have that big of an impact, considering that the synergy that NRG has always managed to maintain, and a large portion of that due because of the way that members such as Rafa is able to communicate along with the entirety of his whole roster. I think that almost anybody at NRG would say that he's probably one of the most talented members of this team.
And I tend to agree. He's one of the people that the energy runs through, the other being adapting. If iRaffer isn't having a good game and adapting is, it's okay. But if both of them aren't having a good game, then there's no real cohesion, there's no real momentum going for the NRG boys. And this game, he got off to a good start. He managed to help out Yammyn in the mid lane when he fell behind, and it was just a good play overall from them.
And we've heard a lot about iRaffer already. I mean, just from the seasons that we've been able to watch him play, but more importantly, what iRaffer has to say about himself.
I am Barracuda, and I play for Luminosity as their hunter.
I'm Craig Rathbone, known in-game as iRaffer, and I'm the support and captain for NRG Esports. So my competitive background is mainly in Smite. I've always played other games to like a high level, a high caliber, but I never got picked up by a team. So my goal this year is to work on myself mainly. I've noticed like a big shift in the meta. I can't get away with a lot of the stuff I used to do. So I've started to change my play style already. You can probably see that in some of my games, how I like instantly switch. It's like kind of like switching stances, you know, you completely switch playstyle just like that. But yeah, I'd say my goal is just mainly to focus on myself and to win Worlds. Like, there's no other goal from any other player, I think, other than that. I'm not really afraid of going against any particular team. I just feel like you should go into every game trying your heart out, no matter who it is. You know, you shouldn't troll. You know the consequences of trolling. You can throw games just off one troll play. But yeah, I'd take every team as serious as the other one. I'm just going to give a small shout out to someone from the hi-rez staff.
The worst caster, smiley face F dot. Whoa, that's some shots fired right there.
I guess I could do another change.
Oh.
And that's why we have the NA bias when it comes to NRG Esports. Alrighty, iRaffer, feeling pretty strong and big boned over there, but this is a guy who, it's interesting that he mentions how he doesn't think that any team should ever risk trolling. I mean, iRaffer's not exactly been the most serious candidate, but when it comes to gameplay, he is 100% serious all around.
He's been around the block for quite a long time before establishing this roster for NRG Esports. He's been in multiple teams before, finding his spot in the scene now. He's looking to lead this team against Obey Alliance.
And Bay Alliance are certainly seeming to struggle a little bit against NRG. They do have the first pick yet again against NRG, which I'm certain they're looking forward to. But Alpha, do you feel as though this is a little bit of a strategy by NRG permitting Obey or letting Obey have the first pick?
It worked out for them last time. They got the draft that they wanted, they got the counter picks that they wanted. Why not just let it go again? And I do like the change up from Obey here. Banning out the Fafnir was a key point of NRG's game plan and really what allowed them to carry through that mid game.
They were too worried about the Hui onto emilitoo in the first game, banning that away, and taking the Serqet right off the bat allowed the Fafnir to go through for NRG, expecting to kind of roll with Amaterasu for emilZy. Didn't really pan out the way they wanted it to.
And why do you think that NRG are still prioritizing this Bologna ban?
It just does extremely well in lane. It doesn't really lose to anybody. Even if you stop the bludgeon damage from coming out, it still got that AoE basic attack and invade on your jungle incredibly well, and that Eagle's Rally ultimate on such a short cooldown offers so much utility to the team in a team fight.
Well, it seems as though there's going to be a little bit of a salty run back for Twig on the Serqet. Totally, do you think that's a risky first pick?
I don't necessarily think it's too risky. Serqet onto CaptainTwig. He's playing very aggressively since the switch in the mid-season point in Season 3. So he's been making the plays happen. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances where NRG were always there to respond in kind, to make those counter rotations and not allow CaptainTwig to get any sort of momentum under his belt.
And Poseidon seems like such a high priority pick for NRG lately. Combine that alongside the Athena. Do you feel as though Athena can provide the same sort of presence that Fafnir did?
Well, in the game 3 that we had against NRG at the Gauntlet LAN, we picked Athena, and every single time Dimi tried to go in with his Tier into the backline, it was an Athena taunt into just blowing him up. And Serqet is incredibly squishy, could do the exact same thing without having to expend ultimates. And again, the Hombat's locked in once more. The Terra ultimate, the Terra's Blessing, can help the Serqet mobile around the backline a bit more, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
These are almost exactly identical drafts to what we saw last game from both teams, minus the fact that Terra and Athena are the little shakeups in between. But do you feel as though Obey is going to try and draft into the Nox again?
I don't think they are. It did well in the beginning of the game, but once the teamfight started coming out, it didn't look like something they had a whole lot of practice on during the teamfights. So draft something a bit more comfortable for PrettyPriMe in that mid lane, maybe even the Vulcan.
Shouts to the Hui and Cupid bans, definitely trying to make emilitoo a lot more uncomfortable in that duo lane.
It's all about the timing, because the fact that the support, mid, and jungle was picked first. In the first game, they weren't expecting the Hunter to go through that early on, so electing to ban the Hui and Cupid in the second stages.
And I mean, you can never go wrong with Hui and Cupid bans, especially when you know that it would be emilitoo piloting either of those gods. Might as well throw him onto something he's a little bit more unfamiliar with. But then again, emilitoo is still a talented ADC by all means.
And what's more, they still let the Rama through. It's still a very high priority pick here, and I can see no other pick right now apart from the Rama. Maybe even the Anhur coming out for NRG. They have a lot of setup for those Impales.
But in the other side lane, Osiris being locked in for NRG Esports. He is a very aggressive soling god. Dimi not really known to play Osiris all the time. He's more comfortable on losing matchups to allow the rest of his team to be able to control the pace of the game, and then once Dimi makes these rotations, he'll be a huge impact. However, against maniaKK, I feel like that's more targeted, making sure that he doesn't get that aggressive early god.
We've seen maniaKK's Osiris multiple times throughout the split, and it's not a fun sight for the enemy team by any means, but giving him a god like Hercules, I still like that matchup coming through in the solo lane.
I like the matchup until it hits level 5. Until Osiris gets that Lord of the Afterlife and shuts down the healing, it looks a good pick here.
Well, both of these drafts are looking pretty sound to me. Alpha, who do you think's taking game number 2?
I think NRG's draft is a lot better this game.
Energy all the way.
Well, we know how you guys might be feeling back at home. Whether or not this is the end for Obey Alliance will be time to find out very shortly here. And for now, it's going to be F-Dot and Aggro taking it away to game number 2.
Obey trying to move on and take game number 2 to make sure that their spring split doesn't end here. And I like this draft, Thom. I mean, the Cernunnos, they went back to it, but I love this Hercules pick for maniaKK.
I think the Hercules pick for maniaKK is going to be fantastic. I'm really worried about the support player on NRG, if you ask me. I think that is the worst player in the league, iRaffer. 1 for 1. That's how we do it. Now, usually I throw the card at the camera.
It's too big.
This is a really big card.
Yeah, just gently set it. I'm going to take this, actually.
I really wanted
sure.
to throw it.
I know you did, and that's why I took it from you. Obey actually bans away the Fafnir, though, from Rafa, and this seems to be the other pick that he's been going to all weekend long, or will be going to all weekend long, basically, is this Athena, and I love it in this draft with that taunt into the Whirlpool setup. Easy there, easy Krakens, basically, for Yammyn all game long.
One of the classic combos there for the mid lane, Yammyn on the Poseidon. Absolutely love it. But going back to this maniaK selection, this is the god that maniaK cut his teeth on. maniaK, once upon a time, was a healer player over there in the solo lane. He played things like Aphrodite, he played things like Hell, and it kind of got him killed. So he had to transition into warriors. We're talking years and years ago. And the Hercules was one of the first characters that maniaK really started to dominate on. And that whole walk forward and just dominate an area, that was maniaK's Hercules first and foremost. Bringing it out here, this is a game that you know Obey need to win.
And that's what I like about this draft, is that maniaK is on a god that he can be that just walk forward and make you pay for your transgressions early on. That's what I like about this pick, and I think that Obey is going to have a little bit more success in terms of the later game team fights or later to mid-game team fights where they have a lead already. Obey really tried to force that Gold Fury last time. That was really the beginning of the downfall in that game, I would say. And so this time around, they're going to have a little bit more pressure and objective control with this Vulcan and Hercules pick.
NRG are going to have the pressure on the right side jungle. maniaK doing what he can, but might have gone a little bit too far. The slow out of Dimi can control maniaK. Both little guys at the speed buff camp going to go down for the count, and the little guys at the blue camp will as well. So good farming coming out from the guys on Obey.
Twig is going to be able to steal away Adapting's speed buff and now look for the fire elementals as well. I thought Adapting was going to try and solo that last big creep on the speed, but instead decides to go to lane and without hitting level 2. So Twig certainly ahead right now.
Yeah, excuse me, I said good farming coming out from Obey. It's NRG this time around. Obey was the team last game. They really dominated the jungle, and NRG wanted no part of that this time around, starting the invasion. And again, I was talking about adaptation and how important that is to be on top. We saw adaptation mid-game, which is what allowed NRG to go ahead and take game number 1 in our best of 3 here. But the adaptation in the mid lane, very important. Yammyn stayed way back. Usually that early kill in the mid lane comes from the okie doke wraparound by either the hunter or the solo laner that the mid laner doesn't expect. Well, last time just came from a big burst that the mid laner didn't expect. So Yammyn sits back on the tower and just makes sure he avoids a lot of the nonsense that's going on there.
And Yammyn has to worry about how much damage PrettyPriMe is going to be putting out. He's not gone for any sort of starter item. He's gone right for the Soul Trap. This is what you're building into for Book of Thoth, and that's a lot of power. 65 magical power for that 1,400 gold. Also get a little bit of mana on top of that as well, but no real regen here available for PrettyPriMe.
Yeah, it's a nice start, and he's able to pick up one health potion he has left remaining, and that's he's just got to play it really careful. And thanks to the turret, he's able to sort of back off a little bit. Backfire also going to keep him a little bit safe as well, especially compared to the when you're up against a Poseidon. Poseidon's damage very predictable. It's not like a chain lightning or something where you have to be dodging and weaving a lot. You generally see where the whirlpool is placed down. You don't get hit by the giant tidal surge, and you're okay.
But he does have to worry about the Fear No Evil coming out of Adapting. emilitoo forced to use his beads on that left side. Ataraxia already off to a much better start in this lane because emilZy's still here with him. Now, this does mean emilitoo is going to hit 5 first, as he does, just clearing out the remaining archers underneath his tower. But there's a rotation coming in from NRG. Yammyn level 5, and they're looking for emilZy.
There's the taunt. Yammyn shows up at 5. emilZy down for the count. That's first blood. NRG take it this time around. And I said earlier on, Aggro, I said, listen, game number 1 will dictate this set. Whoever takes the game, I think that's going to be who takes the set. And NRG in game number 2 certainly poised and ready to prove me right.
And again, it's Rafa setting up for that squad. I mean, everyone on NRG gets so much praise, but I think Rafa has had an unbelievable spring split. Basically, from the very get-go, even when NRG was struggling, Rafa has looked pretty good throughout. Now, he did have some games where he struggled a little bit with the positioning, but whenever he's able to just play aggressive, I don't think anyone positions as aggressively as Rafa does in the support role, and it just makes you so uncomfortable, especially on a god like Athena that can set up for his team at any given moment.
Plays like that remind you that he started his career as a jungler. Just the fantastic assassin pathing, making sure with his teammate to set up the ambush there. But for Season 4, Rafa is returning to his lead by example type gameplay. I think when this team first started, he grabbed 4 young guns that were relatively green and said, all right, we're going to go win and just follow my lead, do what I do, and that's what happened. The team fell in line. Well, as everybody matured and got better, got adapted. You don't have to be that guy all the time, but people noticed that they fell into a rut. Rafa sits himself straight, fixes up the posture, and all of a sudden, his team's getting Gold Furies at 4 minutes like it's 2013 all over again. Bang! NRG starting this one off hot. 1,000 gold in the lead.
Now, if you're sitting at home saying, why did NRG just use Fear No Evil and Kraken to secure that Gold Fury? Well, I don't think Obey knows about it. Twig going aggressive onto Adapting, gets his Purification beads out. The Earthshaker over the wall just barely misses, but Adapting still very low.
And it's going to be Twig jumping on in. Adapting still has the jump available, so no death just yet. Perhaps one of the biggest things we failed to mention so far about Obey's draft. I mentioned how Hercules is the maniac choice. PrettyPriMe was the Vulcan for a large majority of time in its competitive Smite.
Was the Vulcan? He still is the Vulcan.
More players have come out and shown their prowess on Vulcan. My man was playing Vulcan before he was considered a viable pick.
Sure, but
and would win games on it. And I agree with you. He's still very much Mr. Vulcan.
Without a doubt, and he's the one that I always, if Vulcan's picked, I want to see it. PrettyPriMe is the one controlling it, just so comfortable on the god, not only in terms of where he wants to position, but in terms of his outright damage output, knowing how much he can kite around. That movement speed passive that he got really catapulted Vulcan into viability pretty quickly, and PrettyPriMe, like you mentioned, he was playing it before that Vulcan was considered viable. So now that he's, not, I wouldn't say like, you know, a top mid lane pick, but a meta pick as well. You can definitely expect PrettyPriMe to have a solid performance.
And perhaps the biggest change from the from this selection to the Nox is the objective secure. NRG got that Gold Fury simply because Obey didn't know. That's the only reason that NRG are able to go ahead and grab that. You can see the vision coming out, one behind the gold, one by mid Harpies. And I think there was a more aggressive ward earlier on. And with that information, NRG's allowed to go ahead and start the Gold Fury, and if nobody shows up, well, we'll just hard commit.
And again, it was Ataraxia who was pinned in lane whenever that Gold Fury was going on. This Cernunnos pick for me, Thom, has not panned out thus far for Obey. We've seen it consistently. We saw it yesterday as well, and it did okay.
Solid okay.
Yeah, it did Hunter stuff.
Yeah.
It did nothing special in my mind. I understand that a lot of pros and a lot of, you know, basically everyone thinks this character is incredibly strong, but for me, we just haven't seen it at this level quite yet.
What it comes down to is that, like, this is the first weekend that we get to see competitive Cernunnos. And Cernunnos characters, Ataraxia forced to use the beads, get away from the taunt and the subsequent whirlpool there. Individual, solo, dual Q ranked is a miserable barometer for how a character is going to do in competitive. And even scrims can be a little misleading.
Without a doubt. I mean, scrims tell you they help, but they're not at everything. Twig has to use his purification beads. Yammyn looking for that Kraken, but here comes the turnaround. The Earthshaker over the top is not there in time to save Twig.
But Yammyn gets the kill credit for that one. Taunt onto emilZy. Yammyn's relatively low. Pincer from the left as Ataraxia comes through, but there's too many energy jerseys. He walks into a whole mess of trouble. Still in trouble. maniaKK shows up, and Dimi able to take down the Hunter. Trouble on the left side as well. emilZy half HP trying to cause trouble for emilitoo. And either way, everybody bubbling out.
That meditation from Rafa was perfect. Yammyn was 1 HP.
Yeah.
Was 1 HP. And then all of a sudden he gets 15% of emilZy's missing health. I mean, that was perfectly timed from the Guardian, and that was so big to make sure Yammyn stays up. I like the idea there from CaptainTwig, and that's what we see from him all the time. He knows he's dead in that scenario. As soon as he doesn't have purification beads and he goes back in, he knows he's toast. But he doesn't care. He wants to set up for his team. Unfortunately, it's just a little bit too early for that Vulcan damage to really one-shot Yammyn. If PrettyPriMe had pen boots there, completed, that's probably a dead mid laner.
Yeah.
But either way, Yammyn able to escape with 1 HP. But you can already see just how much damage this build from PrettyPriMe is doing. Vulcan is a character that takes a long time to become that late game mage. Longer than Scylla, I would say. It takes longer to become relevant on Vulcan than it does on Scylla. But PrettyPriMe with this build, rushing the Book of Thoth, has already leapfrogged that incredibly weak part of the game for Vulcan and is getting closer and closer to that late game monster stage.
So where specifically are we looking? Are we looking at 3 items, 4 items, a specific level?
Usually for Vulcan, it is level dependent because of how important leveling multiple abilities is on him. He's one of the few characters that you can really go multiple different level paths with your abilities. You can level the Inferno Cannon, you can level your Backfire, the Meatball. You can see that PrettyPriMe went for the Backfire and is now leveling the Magma Bomb over the turret. So once PrettyPriMe hits about level 14, that's when he's going to start to do a ton of damage.
CaptainTwig forced to jump away after the ultimate from Dimi. Maniac's can generally be fine. Yammyn shows up, drops a Kraken onto the Aegis. PrettyPriMe, well done. A mid laner for Obey.
Great body blocks out of emilZy as well. He's going to get that Fear No Evil, but another good ultimate out of PrettyPriMe forces NRG back.
And they're going to force out the Athena ult as well. That's generally a win for Obey, I'd say.
Without a doubt, Ataraxia playing aggressive. emilitoo turned into the pig, but not quite enough damage. Remember, you aren't slowed in that mode, so you're going to be able to walk away just fine.
And that's going to be 10 minutes as the Fire Giant about to respawn. Obey on the left side, forced into the NRG's jungle. CaptainTwig relatively low, looking for adapting. Tosses him towards the rest of the squad. Half HP on the Assassin as he tries to turn it around, but PrettyPriMe puts Obey on the board. The first kill for the blue team.
Yammyn hanging out in the mid lane, about a little bit less than half mana, but doesn't have that Kraken, and so Obey feels confident enough to posture around this Gold Fury. Rafa in a bad spot, but is able to dash out of that root from Ataraxia and the stun from emilZy.
Right now, NRG still waiting for their moment. Very close team fight there as it goes in the direction of Obey, kind of. They get a kill, so it goes in the direction of Obey, but at the end of the day, it's all even. And Dimi certainly just doing what he wants. The solo kill onto maniaKK.
Didn't even need the ultimate. maniaKK just a little bit too low to handle the pressure coming out of Dimi. And look at how Dimi has already completed his boots and a Mark of the Vanguard and is at the same spot in his build as maniaKK, who only has that Mark of the Vanguard and the boots. No extra starter item. That's the difference maker there. Dimi has that extra power, extra health, and getting some health back on those auto attacks, and maniaKK is just sitting there trying to not die.
I like Dimi's selection of the Thorns. Thorns is a fantastic ability. We see Thorns picked up primarily in a lot of hunter exchanges when there's multiple hunters, but here it's used when there's damage that cannot be stopped. Once you launch that Vulcan ultimate, once you apply that Serqet dot, you can't pump the brakes. It's already there. So Dimi has that Thorns to punish the damage that Obey can't stop. I really like that decision making.
Without a doubt, I totally agree with you. Ataraxia, I don't think built any lifesteal either last game. Lifesteal, the big thing that cuts through Thorns and Hide of the Nemean Lion as Dimi invades the speed buff and gets it over top of CaptainTwig. Meanwhile, Gold Fury for NRG, they're going to be able to secure it.
PrettyPriMe just a little bit too early there, brings it from about 15% down to 1, and the last hit goes to NRG. Valiant try, but not going to successfully happen. CaptainTwig forced out by Dimi. Everybody collapsing on the Broken God. And the Osiris will fall down for the first time this contest.
So just like CaptainTwig sacrifices himself to try and get his team ahead on those back left Harpies, Dimi does the same there for NRG. Knows he's probably dead in that scenario. Tries to get the kill into CaptainTwig, but it's all in the name of making space for that Gold Fury.
No Fear No Evil available, no Kraken available either, but maniaKK's gonna fall down very quickly. Obey able to secure the objective, but they do trade their soul laner out for it. PrettyPriMe's Aegis is also part of the exchange. Ataraxia is going to be added to the trade column, and Yammyn gets credit for it. 3-0-2 for the mid lane.
Not worth it there for Obey, losing 2 members for the Portal Demon. Even though that helps out PrettyPriMe, CaptainTwig, and emilZy getting that global gold, it doesn't help maniaKK and Ataraxia, who are now sitting on the bench waiting to get back to farming. And again, emilitoo has just been a little bit more impactful this game than Ataraxia.
CaptainTwig gets himself pillar impaled by Emil. Very strong accuracy coming out from the Anhur here, bringing Captain from about 100 to 50. Just with a couple of basics.
Now, CaptainTwig not only popped a health pot there, but has this Watcher's Gift. Went for this 800 gold item right after the boots to try and get his farm going a little bit harder. So he does have a little bit of sustain built in from that item. Remember, normally it's only supports that get healed whenever a minion dies around them that they did not last hit. But Twig's going to have that option available to him as well. Not only that, but the Bumba's heal from the jungle.
It's an interesting take. That might be the first time I've seen the Watcher's Gift on a jungler.
I mean, it was something that a lot of people were thinking about doing at the beginning of Season 4 with how strong Watcher's Gift was after the recent buffs coming into the season, but it delays your power spike pretty significantly. 800 gold for literally no offense is something that a lot of junglers aren't willing to go for. Twig a little bit more farm-oriented, he's down.
emilZy, that's what happened to him. That's what happened to emilZy right there.
He just ate everything. The Desert's Fury, the Fear No Evil, the Kraken as well. maniaKK in trouble once again on this right-hand side. Down comes the ultimate from Raffer. Dimi needs it. Raffer going to be able to pick up that kill. But again, maniaKK just not having the impact that he did during the online phase.
What is different here about this solo lane? PrettyPriMe likely to fall down unless the jungler shows up, and he will. Adapting goes ahead, puts the boots on, but PrettyPriMe stomps him back. Down goes the monkey.
Big kills there for Obey. Now Dimi's in between three. There's the tether and the thorns, but the last breath comes out, and he's going to fall. CaptainTwig notches his first of the game, and Obey get 3 critical kills in order to put themselves back near contention.
You know what? maniaKK trades his life for that, but puts NRG out of position and allows a rotation from Obey to make that happen. So, I mean, that's by no stretch. That's not a good play by maniaKK to fall down, but good things come from it. So, silver lining somewhere for the guys at Obey, still trailing by just underneath 3,000 gold.
Now, but this experience difference is not very large right now. Only 1,500, and that's basically maniaKK to Dimi.
Yeah.
maniaKK is going to have some trouble frontlining up, especially up against that taunt into Kraken combination. maniaKK is lower level than Raffer at this stage, and that is a problem for Obey. But PrettyPriMe is doing tons of damage now. He's got his penetration going with that Obsidian Shard. CaptainTwig has finished off some penetration of his own with the Jotun's Wrath. This is not a bad spot for Obey. They've got a lot of good team fight abilities here. Of course, the Vulcan Exo in the middle of team fights. Ataraxia has great control with the Cernunnos, but emilZy on this Terra is so good in the middle of those 5v5 skirmishes. So this could turn out okay for Obey, but this is the man who's got to be careful. maniaKK on this right-hand side cannot afford to take another death quickly.
And I'll answer my own question that I asked before. I think maniaKK was just not the focal point of teams earlier on during the regular season, whereas NRG here, Dimi has gotten some solo kills on him, but Adapting's here in this lane as well, making sure to keep this Hercules down.
Without a doubt, emilitoo and Ataraxia boxing on that left-hand side. Emil jumps in, but emilZy's coming around the back. Can't quite find the root or the stun, though.
Dangerous play from Emil, but confident as always. Walks away like there's no issue. Adapting forces the beads out of PrettyPriMe on that Vulcan. Here comes the blink forward. Yammyn going to be the target. PrettyPriMe can't help. Yammyn's ultimate not on the mark either. Yammyn falls down to the hand of CaptainTwig. On the backside is going to be Raffer. He's surrounded by Obey jerseys. maniaKK gets the kill. That's his first of the game with the meditation. They're going to keep on going.
The ultimate out of PrettyPriMe was beautiful. 700 damage at 16 minutes is way more than most mages can handle. A little bit of miscommunication. Twig actually throws Yammyn out of range from the meatball, but it ends up not mattering in the end. That wild hunt from Ataraxia was also key. That's what makes this ability so good, is you can just throw it from a distance around a wall. It doesn't matter. Obey clawing back into this game piece by piece. Now after that Gold Fury, down only about 1,000 gold.
Yeah, really strong play from Obey there. Again, making sure to look for the objective as soon as the fight is over. No real discussion, no hanging around for a tier 1 tower, just go right to the Gold Fury. That quickness is very important when you're playing at this high level. You can't linger around for a second. In this game, when you get rooted by that wheelish tether, it's, what is it, 0.8, 0.5 seconds?
Yeah.
It feels like an eternity. It's the same way when you're making a decision for objectives. You have to go immediately.
And absolutely, Obey has that veteran presence that allows them to make those calls like that. It's just all about having that experience, being in the situation before.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys playing in the World Finals last year, that being PrettyPriMe, CaptainTwig, and Ataraxia. These additions of emilZy and maniaKK, I mean, I was talking to emilitoo during our interview yesterday. He was saying that he thinks Obey is better than they were last year. They were the second best team in the world last year, at least during that weekend. So you know that this team has incredible potential.
And I mean, maniaKK has been playing for a long time, going way back to the SK Gaming days, which I think was one of the more dominant online teams. PrettyPriMe has played in the finals of 2 separate world championships.
As has Ataraxia.
So, I mean, the veterancy on this team is absolutely through the roof.
Portal Demon started up by NRG. Double taunt there from Raffer is good, but it doesn't get any relics out from PrettyPriMe, though he does take a decent amount of damage. Portal Demon does go down in favor of NRG, and that Terra's Blessing's on cooldown.
That was a really interesting zone coming out from NRG. They just kind of distracted Obey while they took the Portal Demon. That's a confidence play right there. PrettyPriMe has his ultimate. maniaKK has the boulder. Ataraxia has the wild hunt. And NRG just sort of go for it.
There just wasn't an easy way in, even with that ward coverage being there for Obey. They knew exactly what was going on, but felt like they could afford to give up that objective at this stage in the game.
Right here, NRG looking for the mid lane tower. Ataraxia, CaptainTwig, assassination right here. Looking for perhaps the wraparound. Raffer's going to chase away the assassin.
Twig has just been playing like this all set long, coming around the back, looking for those isolated targets, and that's what Serqet has to do. The team fight for Serqet is not particularly strong. It's all about trying to find that one target that got away with low HP, blinking in, hitting them with a last breath, and then getting out of danger and hoping that it spreads to the rest of the opposition.
And I like that Ataraxia was sitting side by him. The taunt into the root from the Cernunnos, that is a almost guaranteed kill. I mean, you're going to take relics into account, but by the time that NRG comes over and assists whoever got hit by the Cobra's kids, well, that target is poisoned, and he's just going to poison the player that comes to assist him. So I like the two-man combination there from Obey, but NRG doesn't bite too hard. They don't even go for the tower aggro. Instead, they back off and just sort of recollect themselves.
This game seems to be, Obey seems to be much more comfortable this time around. I think that, we talked about it in terms of game 1, they just lost their patience a little bit in my mind in terms of pulling that Gold Fury with Yammyn around with a Kraken. That's what really spelled the beginning of the end for this team. This time around, playing it much more patient, much more reserved, able to play confident up against the World Championships, the champions, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. I really like how confident Obey is feeling right now, even against the defending champs.
They're playing much more Obey Alliance.
Yes.
I said it. I thought they definitely overthought the last game in the draft, and I thought you made an excellent point by saying they got impatient, at the Gold Fury, and I think that carried on throughout the rest of the game. And I think you had a couple of players just a little bit uncomfortable with their selections and their positioning, and that can resonate. It's like wearing a bad pair of shoes. It's not going to ruin your day, but the whole way you have this nagging feeling in the back of your head. I think that's what happened in game number 1, where Obey, they didn't completely drop the ball too hard. I think NRG just successfully made a lot of plays, but the whole time NRG just felt a little bit off. Obey, that is. And here in game number 2, much more comfortable, ready to defend at the tier 2 tower.
Tier 1 getting sieged down here by NRG. PrettyPrime's here with that ultimate ready to go. Blinking into the backside is Twig, looking for emilitoo. Meditation popped, and now Twig goes back in.
There's the dash, and there's the ultimate out of adapting. Ultimate out of the mid lane, Yammyn as well. It hits nobody, and that's going to be a big deal that Obey can punish. Whirlpool to stop Ataraxia from dashing forward. And NRG get the full retreat after using all of their ultimates. Obey do expend 4 of their ults trying to defend. maniaKK still available.
Has that boulder, but it's Obey who has the sustain courtesy of the Terra. Now it's Obey's turn to try and get this siege going. Dimi narrowly avoids that driving strike after the pull.
Blue team sieging tier 1 tower. Let's ride along with Obey Alliance as they take on NRG.
Alright, careful guys.
Slip the poke. On a bit. Back up. We can heal. All their ults are done. Can we go gold? Go gold. Yeah.
Maybe. They're not that low though. We can keep on sieging. Keep on fighting this guys. Keep on fighting.
Can we go? Keep sieging.
Oh.
Careful. Osiris.
Athena's not here.
Keep pulling Osiris. Oh fuck, wait.
Osiris They're all here. 5 mid.
I don't have any.
We can't get in there.
2 seconds and all. 2 seconds and all.
Can we go gold now? Go.
Sign is backing.
Sign is backing. Watch out, Prime. Watch out.
Fuck man, that's bad.
Get gold.
That's my ult. Let's buff the Osiris back.
Watch FP.
Yeah, watch for beating.
No, Batz is here. Yeah, I'm gonna zone him.
I'm
just coming.
I'm gonna zone him. Just get it. Burst it. 90, 50.
Okay, we
Nice.
reset.
Get out.
We gotta
Fight. I'm coming. On it. Get out.
Got him.
Nice. Guys, we got a shield. We can get this tower, then push them back, okay?
Hold this up in a second though.
Yeah, get this tower first.
Fuck!
Nice.
Batz is pushing here. I'm gonna push right.
My favorite part about that entire listen-in is maniaKK, before he's done getting knocked up from that Kraken, is calling fight, because he knows he absorbed a lot of cooldowns. Tier 2 tower, Twig forced to jump away after the focus onto him as he blinked in.
maniaKK gets control on the backside, pushes Dimi out of the way, makes sure to hit the mage with his ultimate while the team does the dirty work on the Tier 2 tower. Lead change, it might be 8-8, but Obey Alliance are now leading by about 2,500 gold after a fantastic push. You know, the comps are kind of sloppy in the beginning. They didn't really have an idea. Tower, fight, gold, back. There were 3 or 4 different ideas, and everybody just kind of fighting it out. And I liked how Ataraxia just was like, all right, gold? They said no, and he said, okay, I'll listen to my team. I'll fight for you on the tower. And then it didn't work, and he goes, can we do gold now? I'll do what the team needs me to do. He went with the quote-unquote wrong decision, because that's what a team player does. But as soon as he saw his opportunity, he said, all right, look, we got to go do gold.
Gold time, guys. Any hunter wants to just go and do gold anytime they get a chance. But I was talking to EmilZy yesterday during the games, and he was saying that it was me and Hindu asking him about his shot calling dynamic on the team and what really happens. And he was like, well, we all kind of shot call, and we hear that from time to time, but it was whoever has the lead seems to be the one who takes over in terms of the shot calling. maniaKK does not have a lead right now. He's been getting handled in this lane all day long, basically, but it was his call to fight along with EmilZy. It was both of them. As soon as they see maniaKK absorb the Kraken and the Fear No Evil and then survive, and then the meditation comes out, that was the big turning point there for Obey.
maniaKK just backs, NRG catches it, and they're going to fight because of it. 5-on-4, 5-on-2 here. NRG push off Obey by using a lot of their ultimates. Adapting and Yammyn have used it, but ultimately it's NRG that's getting pushed out of this portal demon.
That's the biggest play we've seen Cernunnos make. These last 2 engagements have been all about that wild hunt. They've been huge in these team fights. maniaKK's in a little bit of trouble here. He's still going to turn around and get a little bit of a heal. There's Terra ult. There's PrettyPrime's ult completely off the mark. Adapting very low on the backside. Ataraxia giving chase, and the blink gets him away. emilitoo, half HP, going down. There's help from Rafa. Ultimate's already used. Raxian finds Yammyn on the backside. emilitoo's going to get taken out by the front side, unless he can take out CaptainTwig, but he's saved by PrettyPriMe. That's 10 for Obey Alliance. Ataraxia going to Dimi right now. He's got the 2-level lead. That Thorn's doing good work for the solo laner for NRG, and it forces Ataraxia off of the tanky target. But Obey find 2 more kills, and it's on to the 2 main damage dealers. Portal Demon's still up. That is crucial to allow Obey to come through and secure their first Fire Giant of the set.
Fantastic turnaround for the guys in blue here. And, you know, we talked a lot about the veteran presence of these players and how their long-time attachment to the Smite scene has been beneficial. Well, a lot of that was intangible, just being the veteran guy. You could have somebody to look up to as a younger player, all that fun stuff. maniaKK and PrettyPriMe are out here understanding how much damage goes out in a team fight. I go back to that call where maniaKK makes the call to fight while he's getting krakened. He understands the tools. He's been in this position literally hundreds of times. He's played in virtually all 4 seasons. Well, season 3 was a little bit light, but he's been around the block. He knows where the numbers are. He knows the feel of the fight, which is perhaps more important, because you don't get to play with a calculator on your side. You got to feel the damage, you got to understand and anticipate the battlefield, and that's what maniaKK is able to bring.
That brings me back to what I was about to say, though, about PrettyPriMe, where the last few ultimates seem to be way off the mark, but he's trying to anticipate what NRG is going for. That ultimate in that last team fight around the speed buff, he was hoping that Adapting would jump into the ultimate because of the pressure that the rest of the team was giving to him. And that's the thing that's nuts about Vulcan, and I think it doesn't get brought up enough, is that Vulcan does so much damage with his regular 3 abilities that if you hit his ultimate, that's a bonus. He does enough damage between 3 abilities that even if you whiff the ultimate like PrettyPriMe has done the last 2 fights, it doesn't really matter that much.
And when it comes to mages, it's usually tongue-in-cheek, zoning ult. Vulcan is one of the mages that actually works out like that. You can use his ultimate like a sheepdog. You ult to the right, forcing the opponent to ult, to walk to the left into the clutches of your team. That's exactly what we saw.
9 out of 10 people would say shepherd. Only you would say dog.
Oh man,
sheepdog.
Yeah, it's like a sheepdog. They shepherd the.
Oh, I know what they do.
Yeah, it's great.
Just that humans also have that job, and you would be the one to bring up the dog.
Yeah, well, dogs excel at certain things.
That's true.
Humans can't sniff bombs.
True.
Which is also what PrettyPriMe is doing here on the big bomb man. See how I made that work?
I appreciated that.
Every dog gets his bone.
CaptainTwig's going to get 500 gold for his team on that right-hand side. All alone here, but has the Serqet. The mobility is just all there for CaptainTwig, and he's been using it to his advantage basically every single team fight. Again, it's always about, he's not seeming to be blinking right away either. He's been going around the back, getting the couple hits of the Deathbane, getting out of danger, and then blinking in whenever NRG thinks he's out and trying to wait for his cooldowns.
Why are NRG not able to defend? They're at their base. They're kind of tying their shit. What's happening?
They want to make sure that they've got their items. They got a little bit of farm on that left side, pushed out that wave enough to make sure that Obey would have to just face tank that left side Phoenix. They're not worried about 1,500 gold at this stage in the game. These Phoenixes are worth much more.
Almost a half hour of play. We're separated by 10K. CaptainTwig finds himself on the back line, trying to blink on in, and maniaKK tosses the ball to the backside, forcing Yammyn way out of the conversation. Phoenix still alive at the moment, 10% or less. Whirlpool and Kraken comes out, but it does next to nothing, similar to the ultimate out of PrettyPriMe. Now looking for the basic abilities, Dimi jumps away with his ultimate, and the only one left is going to be emilitoo with that Desert Fury.
Ataraxia got a little bit too excited there, chased a little too far in the Titan room and loses about a third of his HP in response, but that wild hunt was huge out of Ataraxia. That's what allowed all of Obey to continue to push forward in that team fight.
No hesitation when you got the meditation. Sticking to the right-hand side, looking for the Phoenix. Obey, now looking for the basics. There's going to be the beads used by Ataraxia. Ataraxia focusing on the opposition, not the target. Finally changes to the Phoenix, and down it falls. 2 birds down for NRG.
CaptainTwig's going to fall, but Dimi did on that right-hand side as well. Obey get 2 Phoenixes, lose their jungler in the process. But I always talk about him when it comes to CaptainTwig. He doesn't care about his scoreline.
Nope.
All he cares about is that Obey got 2 big objectives in that siege.
One of the most selfless players in the league. Always has been, going back to when he played in the mid lane with maniaKK. And that's another wonderful thing. You've got PrettyPriMe and Ataraxia, longtime teammates going back multiple seasons. maniaKK and CaptainTwig, longtime teammates going back multiple seasons. Portal Demon will get leashed as emilitoo shows up, but this might be a battle.
This is close. 4-on-4 here. Blinking from adapting finds PrettyPriMe with the Fear No Evil, but immediately controlled by maniaKK and Ataraxia. He jumps into the back line where PrettyPriMe is waiting for him, but Yammyn hits the big Kraken, but Prime gets a double kill with the gigantic ultimate. Rafa gets crushed by maniaKK's boulder, and all of NRG has to run away.
2 points and 1. It's 3 for PrettyPriMe as emilZy cleans up Yammyn with the hot dash. 4 down on the side of NRG for 40 seconds plus. The team, strong as hell, walking up the right-hand side. Aggro. Game?
It very well could be. maniaKK has that teleport. He can just come right back to this engagement. Prime has to stay alive, though, and Dimi's got enough to make him pay without any relics, but Dimi is the only one here to try and defend. Like I said, the Vulcan ultimate's a bonus, but it's hitting the jackpot whenever you hit it. PrettyPriMe turns it around for Obey. Ataraxia had a great game on the Cernunnos as well, but it's Prime who ends up making the game-changing ultimate, and Obey forced game number 3.
What a backwards set as Obey takes game 2 in 32 minutes of play, 15-10. Not only did I say whoever takes game number 1 is going to take the set, well, that was wrong, but we started off game number 1 with a fantastic first blood out of the guys on Obey, and that one goes to NRG. Then NRG winds up controlling the majority of this game, and this one goes to Obey.
So I'm saying that if I'm trying to win, I'm throwing the early game.
Oh, yeah.
Tactical feeding, and then just making big plays late game.
I'm going to pick Isis in the mid lane and walk my characters into the mid lane tower before everything spawns.
Oh, a sacrifice to the gods.
There it is. Funeral rites. Shout out to the passive on Isis. Fantastic gameplay, honestly, by Obey and NRG. I was actually coming into this one, I thought that this match would not live up to the expectations of a lot of fans at home.
Sure.
NRG, 2-time defending world champions. Obey, arguably one of the best teams in the world, definitely in that conversation. And I really thought whoever took game 1 was just going to sleep on through. We got a set here. We're going to game number 3, and to break down what we just saw, it's Taco, Toli, and AJ.
Not completely wiped out just yet. Obey are still clinging on, but if you looked at game number 2, it didn't seem like they were clinging on for dear life. They were completely dominating as soon as they got past that early stage.
Absolutely. You know, going the distance at Worlds, taking it to 5 games, and I'm not surprised that it's going to go to a game number 3 here as well.
And Alpha, you mentioned it during game number 2 while it was playing out that you weren't feeling super confident with the Terra pick. What do you think was a big turning point in that game to make Terra come online?
What really happened was Ataraxia started rotating, and when he started rotating and that Wild Hunt ultimate came out, NRG didn't really have a chance to deal with it. And the second Terra got some items online and got some defense online, NRG didn't respond by starting to prioritize another target and just blew so many cooldowns just to try and kill the Terra, just to try and kill the Hercules, and were unable to do so. So Obey just took fights from there on.
There was a lot of back and forth action in that mid game, you know, finding a lot of picks onto the Terra, utilizing the cripple on the Whirlpool, really shut down the Terra. But as the later stages went on, we actually saw a lot of impact with the roots, the stuns, the Terra's blessing, the mobility that it provided. CaptainTwig was able to do wonders there, diving the backline.
CaptainTwig was completely over emilitoo, not giving him any breathing room whatsoever, and that's exactly what we wanted to see first game round with the Serqet pick. Whenever you pick Serqet, that backline's your priority, but you can't credit everything to CaptainTwig. As great of a job as he was able to perform on the salty runback Serqet, Prime Vulcan. That's, I mean, we've done it time and time again. Prime on Vulcan is a phenomenal establishment, but this was just incredible gameplay all around.
Yeah, it was a very unorthodox start from him, going for that Soul Trap, that Tier 2 Book of Thoth. A lot of people don't really recognize that as a legitimate start, and it just meant that he could get his damage online a lot earlier, start to output the meatball damage, start to output that backfire damage, and it just made sure that NRG couldn't really take fights around that turret.
I mean, if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense because of the way the passive on Vulcan works. You get 15% movement speed for 5 seconds as long as you're able to connect on abilities and hitting these ultimates, setting up CaptainTwig with some of these easy kills. We see PrettyPriMe from a distance still doing work with this Vulcan.
And it seemed as though there was not really any hesitation, although the comms might have felt a little bit chaotic to fans back at home. And oh god, I gotta take a second to hold that thought because that was just absolutely beautiful from Vulcan.
Waiting for Adapting to jump over the wall, hitting him with a backfire, over the top Earthshaker, still chasing down with that triple kill. Should have been a quadra kill into a penta, didn't really do him any justice, but either way, still a great performance.
NRG wasn't trying to let Prime have that quadra at the end of the game there. That was the entire mindset behind running away. You can't let Prime have the quadra at LAN.
No, not at all, but that's going to be a tied series now. We're going into game 3.
And I don't think a lot of people were really anticipating a Game 3 coming out from either of these teams, considering F-Dot mentioned it, but whoever took game number 1, I think most people were expecting to take game number 2 as well, and especially with the start of that matchup for Obey. What do you think that NRG are going to try and do in response now, knowing that Obey aren't just going to roll over and let it happen?
I think this time they're going to start prioritizing different targets the longer the game goes on, because Ataraxia was just allowed to free cast for 2 of those fights, and CaptainTwig just in the backline baiting out as many ultimates as possible. In the first game, he went there for kills and kills alone. This time, he just baited out the Kraken, he baited out a Fino Evil from time to time, and it just meant that the fight was disrupted for NRG.
Do you think that NRG are going to try and place a little bit more emphasis onto Ataraxia and not permit him to make those free rotations?
I think they're going to put a lot more pressure on the mid lane this time and just start to work that pressure over onto that left-hand side and make sure that Ataraxia doesn't have a comfortable time, because both games he's been allowed to free farm.
And having free farm on a hunter, especially one such as Cernunnos, is not a fun time for NRG. It was a little bit unconventional as well from Ataraxia, because you could tell in-game that emilitoo was prioritizing sustain, building into the Aussie on the Anhur after Transcendence and the Warrior Tabi, but Ataraxia wanted to gas pedal it the entire way through. And Toli, do you think that that was the right itemization choice in that instance?
Absolutely, considering you have a Terra to be able to control the team fights really well in the jungle side, as well as having that Terra's blessing for the increased mobility. There was no real issue in these team fights when you look at Ataraxia 4 against emilitoo. The Anhur was just not as effective against the Cupid, and got to give credit to where credit is due. Obey Alliance banning out the Hui and the Cupid, these two aggressive early game gods that emilitoo has been just so comfortable on.
And speaking of early game gods, I think an interesting point that you brought up actually, Alpha, was how Obey aren't really focusing too much around maniaK's god pool. During the main split, we saw a lot of times they would just pick his Osiris or some kind of heavy pressure solo laner in the first 3 choices. Why do you think that they're opting to just let it default to the last pick selections?
I think it's because during the split, he was still getting used to being back in Smite, getting used to being back in that solo lane. So giving him a comfort pick just allows him that time to adapt back into the meta. And now that he's had a split under his belt, he's got a few comfort picks, a few pocket picks up his sleeve as well. So they can afford to let that pick go a lot further down and maybe even pick up something that they weren't expecting.
We saw Dimi on the Osiris getting a solo kill actually onto maniaK's Hercules, but it didn't matter because he was still going to do a good job in these team fights, finding the pull, the pushes, hitting a really good boulder there during one of these mid-game team fights, having a lot of control in the jungle.
And it's really crazy when you think about it, how much control that Dimi was able to exert into that solo lane. Do you think that maniaK recognized this early on and was just completely content with taking that hit early on?
I don't think he was expecting to have been soloed as a Hercules against an Osiris, but I definitely think he was expected to be pressured out and be put behind, and he played it well from there on in. He made sure that he wasn't really put so far behind that he was useless, and he was just able to then rotate into teamfights, absorb a lot of abilities. I mean, at one point I believe he absorbed a Kraken, a Fear No Evil, as well as a couple of shots from Anhur's Desert Fury, and he still lived.
And watching from a team perspective, when you're solo laner and you watch them take as many hits as maniaK did during that Gold Fury engagement, they were shouting fight, fight, fight. Immediately in the comms, you could just hear emilZy and maniaK. They wanted to engage from the get-go. Do you think that the rest of the team, like, is there ever hesitation involved with that?
No, there is no hesitation. The second you see big teamfight ultimates drop left, right, and center just to kill one person, you're like, okay, they've used all their abilities, they've used everything that they can do to win a team fight. Let's go kill them, let's then take an objective, and then let's win the fight from there on in.
That's just